Edge rusher Devin Hyde announced his commitment to Washington. Who better to talk to than the man himself?
Here we go. How we doing?
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Tomashoff. That's Lars, Hanson. And with us today, we have three-star edge rusher Devin Hyde. And it's going to be so great to talk to him. Thank you for making this. You know, it's a Tuesday afternoon, so it's not your first watch or first listen of the day. So whatever watch or listen of the day it is for you, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, Devin, super great to have you here, man. We want to be probably not the first, but congrats on your commitment to Washington. Just tell us a little bit about why you chose the Huskies.
So, I mean, it came down to a lot of things, but for me, probably just the most important part is, they like to say, putting logic aside of it, it's a really big emotional decision. I definitely felt that way, where to me, there's just so much about what Washington football is. Like, I was talking to my mom about this, and, she was there in the 80s, and, even back then, if you went to UW or you were in Seattle, you went to the games. Like, that's how it is. There's this attitude towards, Washington football there where they are just so impassionate for it. And I just love that so much. And so, that's kind of a program, I really want to be a part of.
So my dad is also a UW alum from the early 80s. I know that's something you've talked about a little bit previously. What was there anything that went into it, just like outside of the football? Because my dad just loves to talk about like just the atmosphere of the school and the education, everything that it gives you. Was that something that also played into your decision?
Yeah, I would say just in general, like when I was looking around the campus and kind of getting a vibe for it, and my mom, she was giving me the little tour around it because she knew it best. But to me, just how the stadium is kind of set up, where in campus you have this perfect walkway just to go down into the stadium, and then you just got everything right there. And it's just this perfect way of just implementing it into the student life, where if you're just a student and it's whatever day it is, it's game day, you can just go right from your class, walk all the way down there, and you just run to the stadium. And just that kind of feel of it, I just love so much. And then just in general, I mean, I think a lot of Seattleites complain about the weather too much, but I was kind of a fan of it. I didn't think it was that cold.
Lars, what do you got?
So I was going to say, the weather of character. So you were a recruit that had interest from long-standing interest from Washington, going back to the Kalen DeBoer days. What would you say was the difference between the two staffs, and what was it about this staff that made you feel confident that, okay, I had the interest in the other staff and this staff, I love school, but I know these guys can also develop me on the field?
Yeah, so first off, the first thing that really just stood out to me so much about the old staff at Washington. So the first coach I talked to was Coach Sheridan, and he came down there and he was talking to one of my teammates, Alec Marshall, because obviously he's the tight ends coach, so he wants to get an idea from him. But just, his attitude and personality just immediately just took me by, like, wow, this guy is really something. And so I went up there, got to talk to some of the other coaches up there, really, really liked Coach Schmidt. I think he's a great guy. And then Coach DeBoer, whether that was, watching him in the games or, being there to witness it myself, but he's just got this, certain aura to him that he just gets his guys pumped up. And I remember just watching that and be like, man, I want to play for a guy like that. And so then obviously when I saw, the whole coaching change and DeBoer left for Alabama, I was kind of worried at first because I'm like, okay, well, who's going to really fit his shoes and really inspire this program and this, community, as did, Coach DeBoer and some of the other people there as well. And so at first I was a little bit hesitant to, start appreciating Coach Fisch, because I'm like, oh, who's this guy? Like, what's he going to do? And then as I was starting to talk to some of the people there, and then obviously my teammate Swane, and then getting some opinion from the other players, and it really seems that this new group of coaches, they're doing a lot more deliberate intent to really help these guys, not just on the field but outside of it, whether that's improving the nutrition that they've got there, whether that's improving the facilities, and even just giving more attention to just all the players, because it did kind of seem like if you weren't really a starter, then you just kind of felt a little bit left out, even though, there's this really great, tight-knit community amongst the players. And that was a big thing that my dad noticed when he was talking to some of the guys. It's like, they've been there through almost like 3 different head coaches. And so, why did they stay? And for them, it was just that tight-knit kind of culture within the players in their locker room that I really, really liked seeing.
So when you talk about this new staff, and you talk about especially defensive line coach Jason KUSI, what is it about their plan for you on the field that stands out?
So they see me a lot of just being a really, powerful edge player on the side, a little more than, being an interior D lineman, but even then they still see me playing anywhere from maybe not nose guard, but just at any spot really in the D line. And I mean, I'm pretty happy about that, because for me, I think I can be a very versatile piece and just showing a lot of, strength in the inside or, strength and speed on the outside. Then even being able to, even though I'm 6'5", being able to get my body low and, being able to, curve around there and, have a good pass rush, but especially setting the edge really well. And Coach KUSI, when I talked to him, I think one of the biggest things that he was really impressed by me and really liked was just, my ability to just pick up on information and being able to learn it as quick as possible. Just, my hunger to just want to constantly get better. And he thinks that, for someone like me, that's going to be what's going to be really, standing me apart from other people as I'm starting to develop there.
I'm gonna dive into that hunger a little bit because I know a little bit more about you. But one thing that you pointed out to me about Coach KUSI was the relationship and how it developed. Take fans through, if you could, when you came up for that unofficial in April and then returned for that May official visit. What did you get to appreciate more about Coach KUSI in that latter visit?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that really took me by surprise was just how confident Coach KUSI is, because he's had a lot of experience of coaching a lot of really talented players and doing a good job with a number of programs. So I think at first I was just kind of like, oh man, does he just does he think of me as just another player? Does he really have a good interest in me? But I was watching how he was leading some of the drills, and what really stood out to me with the old staff going to some of their practices and some of their games is just the level of efficiency of moving through drills and just having such a deliberate mindset to keep getting better with each whatever they're doing on the field. Like I remember going into their locker room, and then they had this whole, plan, setup of like the times for each drill. And it wasn't cut down by like, 2:45 or 2:50. It was like by like 2:37, like 2:42. It was like the exact minute. And I remember just like seeing that. I'm like, these guys are really, deliberate in their mindset of how they want to treat practice. And then even when I saw, I was there with the new staff for my unofficial visit, it almost felt like it was more efficient, where even though there was this new group of coaches that hadn't been there for for a very long amount of time, it was the most efficient practice that I'd seen out of, going to UCLA or going to Cal or going to some of these other schools for unofficials. It just felt like, they had a 3-hour practice, yet it felt like it was an hour and a half, because it just was going by so quickly and they're getting so much done. And I think a lot of that was, doing parts of Coach KUSI and how he's trying to push his guys on the field. So even though I was, at first I had mixed feelings about him, I was able to notice that. And then as I was able to talk to him more and, build my relationship with him, I just slowly started to learn, what kind of person he was like, and then kind of realized he's the exact kind of coach that I want, because he really cares for his guys and he has a very deliberate plan of getting them better and then also teaching them some self-initiative to come to him with questions on how they can improve themselves.
So I got one more thing about the coaching staff here. So you talked about the aura that you kind of felt around Kalen DeBoer. Another guy who, especially me as a Patriots fan, I'm very curious about this. What's that aura like with Steve Belichick? And especially, not only his lineage, all that sort of stuff, but the NFL experience and all the different things that he brings to the table, whether it be schematically, whether it be, the way he's developed guys for so long at such a high level. What are some of those things that you've noticed in your conversations with him?
So he's really one of a kind of coaches that I was able to talk to throughout, my whole recruiting process, where immediately once I started talking to him, I was just like, maybe this guy doesn't really, know how to do college recruiting that well, because, he hasn't been here for very long. He's been in the league, but, he really knows his stuff and he knows what he wants to do. And he's really, really confident about it. So he kept, reiterating for him, it's like, he trusts what Coach KUSI and, the weightlifting coaches and even like Coach Kramer are going to do to, make their guys better. But for him, it's like, he doesn't care if he puts 5 corners, 5 linebackers, 5 edge rushers out on the field. It's just he needs 11 guys who are going to do the job at the best of their ability and just really, get it done. And so, I felt really great about that, because for me, obviously, as a high schooler and, with social media starting to change it, everyone's always on this, talk about who's got blank amount of offers, who's got blank amount of stars. And, when you go to certain programs, some of them value those kind of traits a little bit more than others. And so I think, going to a program like Washington, it doesn't matter if you're a 3-star, 5-star, no star. If you're just going to do your job the best of your ability, they will play you and they will keep getting you better. And that's, what Coach Belichick, I think, really cares about, because, for him being in the NFL for so long, that's his whole thing. He's got to put the best guys out there. And that's just, and then with him, I think he's got his own kind of like, a little more soft-spoken, but very, intelligent and very, driven and hungry kind of attitude to him. And he's got a bit of a humor to him, which is just absolutely hilarious. So.
Love to hear that. Devin, we got more with you right after the break. And we'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at Gametime, because Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, because prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, which is really great. For me, I'm going to be out in Boston for what could be the end of this series if it goes a little long. And as a massive, annoying Celtics fan, there's nothing I would love more than finding the best deals on tickets to the NBA Finals, and the best place to do that is on Gametime, because they have last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. They got zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a section. Let Gametime choose the seats. With their all-in pricing, you can toggle this feature to show the total up front with no surprise fees to check out. And with the Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You can take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, so now we're going to get to learn more about Devin Hyde, the player, because you are relentless, but that relentlessness doesn't necessarily just come from the football field. It comes from a different field, right?
Yes. So for me, I also played rugby in my off season in the spring, and I kind of got into that a lot more in freshman year. So for me, I'm kind of a football player by heart. But my dad, when he went to ASU for his graduate school, he played rugby there for 6 years. So he stayed there for an extra 4. Just played rugby because he loved it so much. And then he got me into that because a buddy of his named Salty Thompson is a USA Rugby Hall of Fame coach. He runs this program called Eagle Impact Rugby Academy. So my dad was like, hey, Salty, my son, he looks a lot like your son, his son plays for the Olympic Sevens team. So he's like, you know what? Go bring him out there, see how he'll do. Went out there, had no experience. I'm playing with guys who play for like 8 or 9 years. Like they've been doing it since they were like 5 years old. And yet, everything I've learned from football, it just transitioned so well. And then ended up really impressing Coach Salty. And then he's been bringing me back since then for camps, for tournaments, went to Ireland last year for a tour there. And then in just a little bit later this month, June 20th, I'm going to leave to go to Portugal to go play some international rugby as well.
So what are some of the things, because it's really interesting to see how those two sports translate from one to the other. Are there anything that you've learned, particularly playing rugby, that you've been able to translate back to football?
So I would say there's 2 really big things. So one, I think a lot of people, really admire, the way of like how physical guys are in rugby. And they say, you've, improved your tackling from rugby. And I'd say, a lot of that's come from football, but I think even more in rugby is like if you're playing 15s, but especially 7s, your ability to make the open field tackle, but also be really confident in just your line of attack to make that and not, get broken down and get juked is just improved so much because, for me, I play over in East Palo Alto with a lot of Polynesian kids, and for them, their whole thing is just doing the goose step. And so every single time one of them gets the ball, they're either going to try and goose step and make you look stupid, or they're just going to run you straight down. So you got to be able to, in a way, have a good enough base where you're not just going to get put on your butt, but at the same time, you're not going to get juked up and you can make that, form-fitting tackle in space. And then as well, one of my favorite things about rugby, which, not many other sports have, is it really is like the gentleman's game, where it is all about respect. You go to war with this other team, and then afterwards, all it is it's handshakes, it's man of the match. And then, back in my dad's day, you went to a bar with the other team, you both got drunk. So it's a little bit of a cool bit of a history and listening to some of the stories that my dad would tell me back in his day. But I think with a sport like rugby, there is no other sport that is just as team-based, where if you say like in a scrum, if you have like a poor lock or your prop is a little bit too high or whatever, the whole scrum will fail because of that. I think in football there's a bit of that, but as long as you have like a solid quarterback or solid wide receivers, then you'll be pretty good. But in rugby, if you have one guy who can't do his job right, the whole team fails. And so it really does teach you a lot of just that, supporting each other, and that, hey, you got to get your job done because that's how I'm going to win here as well. And as they say, it's not about if you score, it's if we score. Because, you can have this great break where you're running all the way down the field and then you don't have a guy supporting you. And then, someone tackled me. I've got to release the ball. Ball's turned over. All that was for nothing. And, for me, all my teammates who play for my football team, we all go play rugby together. So being able to, play in a sport where it's all about that teamwork transitions over to when we play football in the fall. And, I don't think many other programs can have a similar thing like that going on. So I like that.
Definitely, man. And so one thing that I kind of we'd asked you before, at least I'd asked you before, it's hard to pick kind of one thing in your game to say you're not good at or that you could improve on. But if you had to pick one area of emphasis for you this offseason, what part of that game would it be?
So for me, what I really want to start excelling at is probably adding a bit more variation of pass rush moves into my games. Because for me, that wasn't something I worked on too much. It was just more so I'm just going to get from point A to point B, and I'm just going to get there by being violent, being physical, and using my hands and using my body, as well as working on staying low. So that's been a big thing that I've been working on with a trainer of mine in this offseason, is just being able to move at a very fast speed with a lot of power, while also staying really low, because I'm 6'5", and so when a lot of guys see me, they don't expect me to be able to play at that kind of height where you're really going to excel, because in rugby it's the same kind of thing. You got to stay low, especially like in football. So for me on offense, I play offensive line, so I play left tackle, and when I've got a guy lined up against me, he sees me, and the first thing he just thinks is I'm just going to beat this guy with speed because he's not going to get there. And so first thing I do is I get out there really quick to just stop him from being able to use that on me. And so I use that same logic for when I go on defense, where people see me and they think, oh, he's going to be slow, oh, he's going to stand up too tall, or he's just going to immediately bull rush me. So I'm trying to take away these stigmas that some players probably have of me and just add in more to my game. So then when I come out there, I'm a complete bag of tricks, and I can just do whatever I need in the moment to just surprise my opponent and win whatever rep I need to win.
So you mentioned playing on both sides of the ball. They're playing offensive tackle, playing defensive end. Are there any other things you might have noticed, whether it be like, when it comes to using your hands, or just other things that you think about when you're saying, okay, now that I, obviously moving full-time to defensive end, especially at the college level, that because it's something that I remember people would talk about it with Richard Sherman a lot, where he played wide receiver. So when he played cornerback full-time, it's, he knows that this is the route they want to run, or that this is what they want to do from X, Y alignment, whatever it might be. Is there anything else that you might notice when it comes to, as you continue to develop that pass rush plan and those pass rush moves, that you're kind of thinking about from your time as an offensive lineman?
Absolutely. So for me, I love the mental part of the game and being able to read someone's body language. And so when I'm playing defensive end, or if I'm playing left tackle, I can look at the opponent across from me, and I can see in his stance how he's lined up, where his butt's at, where his weight's at, and just you can even say from how he's breathing, and just the look on his face, just what is he trying to do against you. And so that's why I love relating this back to rugby again, with the teammates that I have who are all Polynesian. Their whole thing is, I'm going to goose step you, or I'm just going to run you over. And so I'm trying to apply that into football at the same time and go up against my opponent and be like, okay, what do I know that he wants to go against me? Not just from what he's shown me on film, but because of what kind of guy he's like and what he's into and all these kind of things, to know in what moments is he really going to be putting out these kind of efforts. Is he a first play kind of guy? Is he, when the game's down to the last minute kind of guy? And then, be able to read that and then know to anticipate what kind of move he's going to do. So like when we were playing against some of the teams later in the season, and I was playing left tackle, I could tell when they're really heavy on their hands, all they want to do was just run me over. So I knew I just had to get in my stance quick, stay low, and just, use my technique of getting underneath him and driving upwards to be able to beat him on that rep. And I knew he was doing that because I could see in his stance what he was going to do against me. Same when I'm playing against offensive linemen, they can always say I think it's on the third step, that's when the guy's going to open his, his hips. So when you go against a lineman like Trent Williams, who's just got an impeccable two-step, you can't really do that kind of thing. And then you kind of watch on his film or his body language what he's going to do from that. And, for me, that's something that I really like doing, from playing both sides of the ball, both playing, my position on defense and then playing the position that I'm going to go against on defense. I get a little more sense of, I guess, the mental side of the game.
And kind of tying all that together, one thing you mentioned to me was that Tijuana had mentioned to you that the level of competition at practice has gotten more significant, has gotten better. Is that something that also kind of appealed to you in terms of when you're talking about going against O-line, D-line? Is that something where when you looked at the program, you could see, hey, these guys are actually building to the right way, and I'm going to be able to compete against some really good talent here at Washington?
Absolutely. So for me, when I was, because the big part was I wanted to talk to Swan and get his piece of it, because I know with him, he's a very, he's kind of like a gentle giant kind of guy, but when, the things he says do come from his heart and they are really genuine and honest. And so he was telling me man, I wouldn't have done this, hosting thing for anyone else, but I heard it was going to be Devin Hyde. So I'm like, absolutely, I'm going to do this. And so I really appreciated having him be there, because I could ask him all these questions, get his honest, word of advice of, what he saw on the old staff versus what he saw on the new staff. And then, like you said, he told me, going against some of the guys now with the new staff, they're got a lot better. They're a lot chippier. They got much better moves in mind. And so that's kind of, making me think, so they've got a much different kind of attitude of just really being hungry to, I think as Coach Fisch has been said, not, I guess, improve off last year, or improve it off last year in a way, but also just continue to build off that and to repeat it and then get back to that national championship and then this time win it. And that's also something that I really like about Washington, is that they've got this really, hungry mindset right now where they're kind of a little ticked off about last year and how it finished. And then now they want to get back at that and then do that again. Because obviously there was a lot of, seniors and juniors who really dominated that last year, who now are in the NFL. And that's kind of how, when Swanee was telling me about it, this group of guys they got right now is a little bit younger, a little more, hungrier, trying to compete to get their spot on the team. But that's going to be the mindset that's going to carry on to as their seniors, because, when they're younger, they got a sense of what that national championship felt like. Now they want to get back to that. And that's something that I want to be a part of.
Got more with you, Devin. We're going to take one more break. So one of the really cool things about getting to do the show is getting insights from people like you, Devin. And one thing that I don't really think has ever really been discussed in a whole lot of great detail, where obviously there are a lot of fantastic writers in the UW community who all will put out stuff about official visits, but I don't think we've ever been able to talk about it in a setting like this. So May 31st was a really, really big weekend of official visits for UW, where there were a whole bunch of just high caliber, big time targets like yourself that were on campus. So tell us a little bit about what that official visit experience was like. Were there any moments that really stood out to you? Like one particular thing, whether it be like a yacht ride or the seafood dinner or anything like that, that really just stood out to you?
So I think, the first thing that stood out to me was when we had 17 guys there and they had us do this one drill. It was after a meeting that Coach Fisch gave, where it was the same kind of exercise that they did with some of their players, where they gave us a bunch of Legos and they said, hey, you and another recruit, you're going to go off in your own little group and you're going to have like 10, 15 minutes to deliberate on these two questions. I think one was like about, what do you love about Washington football? And like, what do you see in like winning at Washington football? And then you had to build what that felt like out of Legos and then go back in the room and, explain about it. And it's just those little kind of team building activities like that just make you think, man, not a lot of people are kind of willing to do this kind of thing. And I really appreciate it even more so because with my high school, something that we've started to incorporate doing in springtime is we have two mandatory meetings, one that's about culture. It's a culture workshop, and the other one's a leadership workshop. And they're about 2 hours long. You go through this whole packet where we're thinking about questions and we're talking about stuff that, not really football related. They are in a way, but it's more so to bond in those kind of ways where you're talking about stuff and you're engaging in these little activities that's going to help you not only, strengthen your bond as teammates, but also get you thinking about other things that are important about football that maybe aren't going to happen on the field, that are definitely going to help you on the field. And so, obviously, you can talk about the big seafood dinner they had at the end, or obviously the yacht ride as well, too. But just that little activity that we did. And then the fact that they're putting in this new room called the fifth quarter room, where they're going to be doing, I think, a couple times a month, similar activities in there amongst their players. So you just get them thinking those kind of ways and strengthening, relationships with each other in ways that not a lot of programs do or used to, but in fact have been proven to be really effective.
So obviously there's only one follow-up that we can make to that. Who was your partner and what did you guys build?
So it was, I forgot his first name, but his last name was Smith. He was another edge rusher, 4-star from Texas. And yeah, I think for him, he's built a big W out of Legos. And then for me, I built this whole little tower that was out of like just a bunch of just like amalgamous pieces of Legos. I was trying to like find some kind of structure to it. And for me, I explained it as, success to get to this top is it's built on a bunch of different pieces that don't look like they fit together, that has this strong foundation. And, the pieces look, it could look ugly in some places. Maybe it could be better put in another spot. But in the end, you all get to this top point and you have this really strong, pillar, built together. And for me, that's why I see, success at, because a lot of people, even my teammates included, when they look at me and they think of my success, they just think, oh man, Devin Hyde, he's this big guy. He's really strong. He's got great effort. He's got a great mindset. And that's just, what made him successful. And yet, the reality of it is that success is not an overnight thing. And for me, really, it's been this building process since I started playing Pop Warner, 10 years ago, up until even just recently, where I really started to get a lot more attention from, college coaches. And then as well, some of the classes I even took as like a junior and even like a sophomore in high school, for me, myself, I really appreciate, how articulate and well-spoken I am, because I don't think a lot of, athletes are really able to convey how they feel about certain things in a really, serious way. But for me, that didn't just come from football, and that didn't just come from my coaches. That came from my teachers. That came from certain classmates who, I really aspired to and looked up to want to be like. And it's those kind of people in my life that then built on me as an athlete.
Smith, Roman, imagine Smith Orogbo and Devin Hyde on opposite edges. God.
Oh, that's a nice combo right there.
But that also does remind me, if you think about that, that's something that the NFL Combine does, where they ask you kind of some off the wall questions and get you ready to be a pro. So that's where I think Jedd's coming with that from. So who were some other guys that what was the impression of some other recruits that you were around? Obviously, you mentioned Smith Orogbo. There's a number of other guys that aren't committed to Washington up there. What was kind of just the general vibe when, as recruits get together? Because again, media can't be on campus for those visits. We can't see what you guys are interacting like and things like that. What is that cohesiveness like on a big visit weekend?
So it seemed like, just in general, from what I got from just looking at everyone else, I mean, the first thing I thought was, man, these guys are all big here. Like, we're all, some big dudes coming out here on this visit. But also, just body language as well, because that's been a big emphasis by my coach to encourage us. I was looking around, I was seeing guys, they're paying attention, they're asking, the right questions. They seemed like, they had the, good kind of looks on their face. They weren't just going around on visits just with like a little mopey expression, not really that happy. So, I won't harsh on, Cal too much. When I was on that visit there, I didn't really feel as excited and pumped up about it as I did kind of on my visit to Washington and even at UCLA. But it seemed with all the guys there at UW, I think they could have been doing parts of just how the presentations went, because I think Coach Fisch and the rest of the staff did a really remarkable job in just showing off, like, here's every reason why you need to be at UW. So then you can leave here with no reason not to be here, right? And so I think just looking around on all the recruits' faces there and just kind of seeing this collective, I don't think anybody there wasn't impressed. Like, everyone really had, only good things to say about it. And then even, Smith, when I was talking to him, he was, a little conflicted between like Texas Tech and UW. And then I remember I was talking to him while we were on our yacht right over, and he was like, man, dude, UW was really impressive. Like, I don't know, man. So he was thinking a little bit more about it. I'm not going to, talk too much about him. And his issues. I'm not going to, spoil it for him, but, it definitely seemed, from what my conversation with him was like, and then with some of the other recruits, everybody was pretty impressed with UW.
So one other thing that I'm really curious about, obviously now that you're committed, there are a whole bunch of other guys there that I'm sure some of them you might have known previously. Is there anybody now that you're kind of turning your attention towards, like, yeah, this is a guy I want to play with, and that you're probably trying to become a peer recruiter with?
I'm hoping Smith joins up, because really, I had such a great, conversation with him, and, with certain recruits, you can tell, maybe they're a little too flashy, or maybe they just, they talk a lot, or they're that kind of player. But with Smith, I think with him, he's a really, down to earth, very, modest guy, and just he talks in a way that just makes me know that, he's done a lot of work to, get to where he's at. But at the same time, he doesn't want to be boasting, bragging it too much. He wants to keep working hard, and he wants to keep getting better. So definitely like him.
So if you had to put together, sorry, Lars, I got one more here, just to kind of in that same vein.
Sure.
If you had to put together a 60-second recruiting pitch, put you on the spot here, 60-second recruiting pitch for him, or why anybody else who was on that visit weekend who's still uncommitted, or maybe somebody who's committed to another school, why they needed to come join up with you at Washington, what would that sound like?
So there's no coast like the West Coast, and really, Washington stands out as a strong school on the West Coast, where, amongst their coaches who have proven to, done a lot at Arizona, or whether that's, Coach Belichick in the NFL, they are coaches there who, if you don't get along with them well, they've done a good job at what they do. And then as well, as an atmosphere at Washington, there's not many schools where the whole area are diehard fans for that school, where they are that school first. And, whether it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, everyone around the town, it's what's UW football getting up to? And what other places can you go to where the kind of attitude is like that there? And, for someone like myself, I want to go out there and I want to be, the type of player that's going to put on that kind of show for the community there, because I want to make them have a great time. So
I like that. Lars, go ahead.
And so just one kind of small element to that was the Big Ten and that move to the Big Ten, because obviously college football is changing and things like that. Did that factor in on any level? Because obviously you ended up choosing between UCLA and Washington, two schools going to the Big Ten. Did that ever factor in when you were looking at other schools initially?
I think in some way, I definitely thought if there was like a league I wanted to play in, it was between the Big Ten and the SEC. And I think, having, UW go to the Big Ten, that's something that I'm pretty excited about, because they're going to be playing against some pretty high level competition. And, for me, that's something that I always get really excited to go do. So, and then even like with rugby, and I'm going to go play international rugby, I myself, I've only really done club rugby, just, for the most part. And I've gone on one tour before, and I've gone and played in a tournament in LA, but I'm going to go play against the U19 national Portugal team there, who placed second in Europe last year. So it's like, it's a pretty high stakes thing. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going into this. How am I going to feel about it? Where is my confidence going to come from? because that's something I like to tell my teammates. It's like, when you get on the field, you're going to have the same butterflies, you're going to have the same nervousness as everyone else on the other team because they're human. They're feeling the same things as you are. It doesn't matter how big they are, how small they are, whatever they've done. So what is it going to be for you that's going to separate yourself, that's going to make you confident on that field? And for myself, it's just I'm doing certain things that I know no one else really does as a high schooler, whether that's, getting up freakishly early in the morning to go work out or, just finding extra time to go on those, extra sprints that, your coaches aren't asking you to do, but you're doing because you want to do it for yourself. Or, when I'm going to Portugal, even though I haven't played rugby for that long, I played football for a very, very long time. And I know with the teammates I play with in my, community over in East Palo Alto, they are incredibly violent. And even when I played in Ireland, the first thing that just stood out to me was just, these guys don't hit like we do. These guys don't hit like my polite guys do. And so when I go up there in Portugal, I just know that I'm going to come out there with a certain tenacity and certain viciousness that maybe they're not, expecting or maybe haven't been used to. And then that's going to set a certain tone where when they get the ball, they're going to want to run from literally, they're going to want to run to anyone else except me. And that's the kind of mindset that I have going into that.
I like that. Lars, you got anything else?
I was going to say, I'll just parlay that because I was going to ask you the one question I always ask at the end of all my interviews, and this. Actually, you don't know this because you didn't commit technically until today. What would be your message to Husky fans? Kind of parlay that because you talked about who type of kid you are. Just what would be your message to Husky fans if you just had a 30-second window just to say, hey, here's who I am, what I'm about?
I would just say, man, I'm coming out there just with the desire, like many other fans right there at UW or many other players and coaches. I'm trying to go back to that national championship and win that thing, man. I want to come out there and, introduce the Big Ten that, us West Coast schools, us, now ex-Pac-12 schools, we're not the wimpy league. We've got some mean players over here who can really come out there and hit some guys. We shouldn't be so looked down on as maybe we were looked in the past because, hell, man, I love the Pac-12. No one's more pissed off than I am that thing got, taken out. So come back with a vengeance.
That is a fantastic way to end this. Devin, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here and all our everydayers out there. We really do appreciate you joining us today for this just awesome interview. And with that being said, make sure you subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere, updating this channel 3 times a week, usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but we had to make a special exception for this, of course. And to make sure, you like the content, make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post surprise bonus episodes like this. And we'll be coming to you again on Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you then.